What's up, Los Angeles? It's your host, Casey Diaz, author of The Shot Collar. Hey, we're going to touch on some really important subjects here today, and I think you're going to enjoy it. A lot of information. Let's get right to it. She's a family counselor, but I want her to kind of just touch base on the field that she's in, and then we'll get right into the question and answers of this episode. It has a lot to do with childhood trauma and the aftermath of childhood trauma. Perla, can you share with us just a few things about you, a little background, for our listeners?
First of all, I have to say that I am pretty cool. You said you have a cool guest, so I am cool. And yes, I am a family counselor and a parent educator. And I have a small project website that I started. I launched this year. It's called In My Tribe, En Mi Tribu. It's the original name, In My Tribe in English. And it's just the services that I offer for families, specifically Hispanic families. I have a passion for working with Hispanic families and, just in the counseling field and educating them on parenting and nonviolent parenting and Christ-like parenting. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm super excited to be here. It's exciting, it's nerve-wracking, and it's super fun. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, I hope I could knock off the edginess of anything there.
Yeah.
Because I think we have so much information to share with our listeners today. When I hear you talking and describing what you do, your field, and all that, you seem to be like you have a deep affection for the type of field that you come from.
Yeah.
Why did you choose family counseling to be exact?
I think that a lot of who we are, a lot of how we grow up and the experiences that we have a lot to do with what we kind of desire to become one day. And I think I grew up in Mexico, and it wasn't a very fun family. We had a lot of stuff going on in my family. And I think I just grew up with this desire to just bring understanding, not only to myself and make sense of what was happening to me when I was little, but also, bringing information to the families, in my family, there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of dramas and a lot of things in the families with my uncles and, all that stuff and cousins and everybody. So I always felt, this need and this passion to want to fix their life. And I said, well, I can't fix their life, but at least I can try to bring some sort of knowledge or wisdom into what's happening and understanding. So then I got into the field of counseling, and I started with child development, actually.
Oh, nice.
I became a teacher. I am a preschool teacher in Mexico. I got my bachelor's in child development. And then from there, I just started discovering more about psychology and behavioral psychology and all of that. And then, I just went right into working with families.
And what's interesting is that, in the Hispanic community or the Latino community at large, it's almost like we tend to stay away from this area, right?
Oh, yes.
As far as counseling goes.
Oh, yeah. It's like taboo. Like, you don't talk about psychology. You don't talk about counseling because I'm not crazy. So if we're not crazy, look, everybody grew up the same. And look, I'm all right, okay?
We
Nothing happened to me. Look, I'm here. I'm alive. And I can eat and I can walk. But there's so much happening in the families. But yeah, that's like the common mentality.
Vicks does not help everybody. Everything. We can't put that on.
But you use it for everything. We use it for everything.
I don't know about childhood trauma, though.
Not for that.
Not for that. For that, we need you guys.
Although now we have oils,
essential oils.
Essential oils that are very similar to what the grandma used to give you. Just smell it.
Yeah.
It's the fancy way of calling it.
Hilarious. It only costs you $90. But no. That's funny. I think that experiences, both good and bad, do something to our brain that makes us, kind of react to certain things in as we're growing. I want to focus first of all, before we get into like the bad portion. What happens to that one child, that one kid that actually has a good, healthy upbringing?
Well, I think it's just, if we're thinking about children, not as a child, but eventually that human being becoming an adult. I mean, you're talking about someone who is going to be responsible, who is going to have a very good sense of who they are, a good sense of self-esteem and identity. They're going to have a very high sense of belonging because they're going to have great relationship with their parents. They're people who often make the best choices in life, and they don't regret, they have less regret for things because they are confident of who they are and what they do, and they have this strong support. At the core they have like what it's their family and their support. So you're talking about someone who is emotionally healthy, and that plays a huge role in who you are as a person, because usually everything that we do in life, behavior, is just a response to the emotional needs that we have. Everything that we do in our lives, the way we behave, it's because we are responding to an emotional need that we have. So if that emotional need is a positive need, then my behavior is going to be positive. So if it's a negative emotion that I'm feeling, and it's awakening all of these negative needs, then my behavior is going to reflect a negative behavior.
For those of you that are watching us on YouTube or that are listening to this website, to this podcast rather, one of the things that you did personally is I was able to give you a copy of the galley. And a galley, for those of you that might not know what a galley is simply an unedited version of the book. And so when my book came out, I gave you and your husband one, and you actually brought it. That's really cool. What?
Let me show it to the people who is going to watch us on YouTube. It's right here. This is the original book. And I have to say, I also you were going to sign this one for us. And then I told Casey, no, don't sign this one. This is not the signed version, because I said, no, I'm going to buy one when it's actually out. And then you sign that one. Yeah. Because that's more legit. But yes, this is the original one.
But that's the original. And what were your first thoughts? I mean, you read through this. It's not a long read. It's very fast paced from what the reviews that we're getting on a daily basis. What was your first thoughts about it?
I could have finished this whole book maybe in one day. Yeah. But I kind of had to slow down. I wanted to end it because it was super impactful for many reasons. But I think one, it was just, you were a friend, and I knew part of your story, but not as detailed as the book shares it. So when I started reading it, I think it was very emotional for me to just realize and to see, the amount of, I don't even know, for lack of a better word, horrible experiences that you went through as a child. That's one. Two, because of my field of work, I was just amazed to see the transformation. I was completely blown away with the person that you are today, and who I knew you were compared to what I was reading did not make sense. So that kind of awakened a lot of questions in me. And I remember reaching out to you and saying, I have so many questions that I wish I could just ask you, because I couldn't understand, and I couldn't grasp, how can someone in so little time, because there's not, we can say there's a whole life, I think how old were you when you got out of jail?
24, 25.
Okay.
There.
And how old are you now?
I'm 48.
It's not a lot of time.
It's not a lot of time.
And you came out of there transformed.
Yeah.
Completely transformed already. So for me, it was like this. Counseling didn't do this. So what happened? And I had a lot of questions in terms of trauma and development, because biologically we are created in such a way that, really, Casey, I was so intrigued, and so, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain and know what was actually happening. And it was just super impactful. And I felt super honored also to have you, and scared. And scared because I was like, what would my mom think if she knows that a shot caller comes and visits my house, and we have barbecue together and carne asada. I was like, oh my God, what is my mom, my dad gonna think? But
Yeah. So one of the interesting things that you mentioned was that, a healthy upbringing, the results of that, I mean, the chances of that child coming to society and contributing, being an asset rather than a risk. I mean, as an adult now, I look and I go, that's right. I mean, I got 3 kids now, and I could see the tremendous difference between a healthy, raising a healthy family. Yeah. Not a perfect one, but a healthy one. Yeah. And I see the responsibility in my children. They're grown up, they're in colleges, and I see the stark, just tremendous difference that impacts their life.
They have a clean path.
Yeah.
They have a clean path. There's really nothing blocking them. There's no guilt. First of all, I hope they're not growing up with any type of guilt, that they know that everything they have is unconditionally given to them. That's what it means to grow up in a healthy family environment where you know how to love your children. We have to discipline them in a way that it always communicates to them that what we do it because we love them unconditionally.
That's right.
And violence, it's not only, hitting people. Violence comes in a lot of different forms. Yeah. I have a parenting class that I give, and usually when we talk about this kind of, the Christ-like parenting or nonviolent parenting, we talk about defining what violence is. And in that curriculum, the way we define violence is everything that hurts the mind, the body, and the soul of a child. And I go even a step further and I say, in the spirit, because in the spirit, I believe that we were created spirit, soul, and body. And in the spirit is where it is the core of who you are. Yeah. Uniquely designed. Only one person on this earth has your identity, has your way of being, and it's in your spirit is what gives you that identity. Yeah. So sometimes with the way we speak, the way we talk to our children, the things that we allow them to experience in life kind of can come so close to influencing their spirit. So then that completely can either completely change the way they're going to behave, because from the spirit comes, and the spirit communicates to the soul, and then the soul communicates to the body. So then the soul is where our emotions are. So then, you have to be always be aware of how are you raising these kids? Where are you actually communicating, or what is it that you're actually touching with what you do? Is it their spirit? Is it their emotions? Is it their physical body? So violence, when you have it in the home, you can have it in many different ways. Ignoring a child when they do something wrong and you completely ignore them, that's a form of violence. And for a lot of people can be like, no, that's just disciplining them because they did something wrong and they need to learn. Maybe if you grew up with parents who ignore you, you think about that now and you say, no, it didn't really affect me. I mean, I forgot about it. But if you go back to that age and you really think about how you felt at that age, it hurt you. Yeah. It created something in you that we don't know how deep it went. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then it comes out as we grow up. And then you just reflect those things in your life. So when you're talking about healthy children, your kids, for example, when they grow up in an environment that it's healthy, where you have a communication, when you express what you feel, when it's okay to be angry and not agree with each other, but communicate it in a healthy way. I mean, you're just providing a healthy path for life. That's the way you do life.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. For me, I got my first airplane ride. I talk about this quite a bit, but my first airplane ride was at 46, and then I compare that to my youngest kids. Going back to when they were in 5th grade, their first plane ride was in 5th grade across the whole entire country from Los Angeles to DC. Wow.
And that's exposure, right? Like you exposed them to something that you were completely unaware of when you were little.
I mean, growing up in Los Angeles, you really didn't come out of a 4 or 5 mile radius. I mean, that's just how it was. Mm-hmm. Now, in the book, I mentioned something that happened to my father.
Right.
And it's a little rough. Mm-hmm. I do go into a little bit of detail on that. My father, Salvadoran, and this is very early on. El Salvador was in a civil war. A lot of crooked politicians. That seems to be the thing, right? And he witnessed both his mom
Yeah.
and his father
Yeah.
being executed. I think you would know much better, but that's got to do something to a young boy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're talking about a very chronic type of trauma. I mean, that's not something that you even, I mean, me thinking about it, I can't even imagine it. I actually have it in this book, and I remember that part was so key for me that I even highlighted it. So whoever's on YouTube, I'm showing you where that part is in the book, and it's in page 6, and I highlighted it because this for me was like, this is where everything started for you.
Wow.
Spiritually speaking, we know about generational things, right?
Yeah.
We inherit things generation
Yeah.
through
Blessing or cursing.
blessings or cursings through generations.
Yeah.
Trauma is a curse.
Yeah.
And biologically speaking, scientifically speaking, Casey, that is proven in the brain. You can have generational traumas inherited from 7 all the way to 7 generations. Wow. So when your father experienced that, I mean, if we don't break that, now I'm talking spiritually, that's going to follow your line all the way to 7 generations. Biologically speaking, it's in the brain. You're creating something that triggers in your brain. It's like a trauma. It's pretty much like a breakage or like a bruise, something that happens biologically in the brain. That's why we know the shape that the brain obtains when there's a lot of trauma is remarkable. You see it. Oh, this person went through a lot, because you can see those marks in the brain. The connections between neurons is just different. So you inherit that. So then your father, the way you describe your father here, for anyone who reads this book and has no knowledge of that, can say and speak so bad about your dad. But for me, when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness. I felt so much compassion for your father, because he just did not know. He just didn't know where that was coming from. Can you imagine a child? I don't know if you say his age here. I don't think so.
No.
But
when that happened, he was around about 8 years old.
Yes. Can you imagine an 8-year-old child seeing that? The amount of rage and, I mean, anger and rage and powerless. I mean, whatever imagine what he felt aside from fear. And all of those things translated into the anger that he couldn't even explain why he had it. And he was hurting. I'm pretty sure that deep down in his soul, he knew he loved you and loved your mom, but did not know how to embrace that love. He didn't know how to communicate that love, because that part of his brain was completely damaged. It was something happened in the middle of his brain that just didn't allow him to connect in a way that was just, healthy. How could he? Did he ever receive any type of help?
I don't think so
at
all.
And then you talk about him becoming an alcoholic. So he was always self-medicating himself with alcohol and probably drugs, because, that experience can bring so many things. Maybe he was experiencing depression and you guys didn't even know. That's a given. Based on what I've heard, I read, and what I've heard you say about your dad, I mean, it's very likely that your dad was completely depressed.
Another thing that I share in there is that one incident, and this is one of those pivotal incidents. I think every kid has a pivotal incident that kind of just, it's almost like stored in your brain, right?
Right.
Whether it's good or bad. And in my case, this particular incident was a bad incident. And it's when he grabs me from the shoulders, and I can smell the alcohol, in his breath. It's stale alcohol. And he just grabs me from the shoulders, and in the most wicked form says to me, "Don't ever call me Dad. I hate you." Even thinking about it now, you kind of like, it does something to me personally. I have a son. I would never.
Right. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that when you became a father for the first time, you had so many questions also about like, whoa. Because when you become a father or a mother, something awakens inside of you.
Yeah.
That love, that unconditional love for your children, just it's almost like a button that just turns on.
Yeah.
And that you can't explain it. You don't even know where that button is. It's just something happens to you when you become a father or a mother for the first time. And as a child, if you experienced anything like you did, I'm pretty sure that it brought a lot of questions to you.
Yeah. I mean, like you think about like, what did I do?
Yeah.
What did I do? I mean,
why wouldn't he love me? Why would he hate me?
It was almost like a battle in my mind and in my heart as well. What did I do?
Yeah.
Like up to this point, what did I do that you have this disgust with even looking at me? Those were questions that were they bothered me.
It completely broke your sense of belonging and your self of existence. A lot of times, purpose comes from the core of where you were raised, your family. That's where you kind of start to discover your sense of purpose in life. That's where, kind of gain a little bit of the confidence to discover what you're going to do with your life growing up. And you were 8.
I was 8.
8 years old when he shook you. And I can tell you, I'm pretty sure that even to this day, you can smell alcohol and something takes you back to that memory because it was in your brain.
And I'll tell you something that I find myself doing with my son and with my daughters all the way through. I find myself grabbing them from the shoulder and then just telling them, I love you. You're going to be so good. You're going to do great things. And I remember catching myself with my firstborn when I grabbed her by the shoulders. And I mean, even just the memory of that when she could understand, and she was probably like maybe 2 when I did that. And it was almost like God allowed me to like reverse the role, like to change it rather.
Yeah, it was a way of healing for you, but also an understanding of what that meant. And it's so significant, even the way he did it, the way he stood behind you, taller, I'm guessing, than you. You were sitting, right? You say you were sitting on the chair, and he's standing and he grabbed you. Imagine that. It's like he's completely over you and putting something so ugly on you, and almost like he has power over you in that moment with this presence, right? And that has a significant impact. So what you did with your daughters was reverse because you knew the impact of that in your life. That impacted something. It created something in you. And if it didn't only create, a longing for love and connection with your father, because we were biologically created with that in us. The Bible says that we were created in his image, in God's image. And he created us with that longing for our creator. When you come into the world, Casey, you don't know about God. All you know is mom and dad, they created me. And your core, your spirit is longing for that feeling of connection with who created you. The ones who are going to communicate that acceptance and that unconditional love and that belonging, sense of belonging and confidence and trust and all of those things, it's going to come from your parents. And if it doesn't come from them, then you grow up feeling the opposite of those emotions, the opposite of those things. And then you are longing forever for those things that were denied to you when you were at a younger age.
In your field, do you ever run into similar cases?
Similar stories in terms of the experience of domestic violence in the home. That was very impactful as well when I read it in your book. I've never worked directly with domestic violence victims, but I know that there are stories and I've heard them. But this one was particularly very unique because, you described the way your mother was just battered to the point of death. And it's just, I mean, that was, I think it was very unique to the story of her mom. I have never experienced, but I'm pretty sure it's out there. I mean, maybe because I'm not in that specific field, but I can tell you that I work with children, young, maybe teenage women who got pregnant at a young age because they experienced those things in the home where they had, a father who will beat up their mom and, they had no idea where to go and they felt helpless. They didn't know what to do and they were longing and looking for this acceptance and just sense of belonging again.
Yeah. We're talking to Perla Leon. She's a family counselor. And, one of the things that I think has plagued us, and I'm almost going to repeat myself, but with the Hispanic community is that it's like a taboo to seek help.
Yeah.
Our kid falls, we don't pick him up.
No.
He puts a fork in the socket, that'll be the last time you put a fork in the socket. We'll hear stuff like that, but counseling or seeking help or refuge, that's not something that the Hispanic community is used to.
No.
And I think that has helped us back a lot.
Oh, yeah.
We become so self-sufficient, and we it's almost like an arrogance that oh no, it's just this fixes itself.
I don't need it, but it's also a lack of information. I want to say it's at some level it can be considered ignorance.
And economically, we just can't. Those parents in their mind, I can't afford it.
Definitely. And I can tell you that that's one of the main reasons why I decided to do this, because I used to work at this organization and right very close to where you used to live when you were little in LA and by Hoover and Washington. And I remember always for 7 years I worked there. Every time I wanted to refer a client to counseling, they will come back to me because they didn't have the money to pay. 1 hour was over $100 if it was for an individual. And if it was for family, it was going to be above $150. They don't have the money to pay that. They're not going to, and they don't have insurance.
Yeah.
Especially here in this country, we have a lot of undocumented families that come from their country of origin and they don't have the means to pay for the services. So that's the reason why I felt I needed to do all of my services, offer them in Spanish first and see, whatever God wants to do. But because it's very hard to access those services. So it's almost like for a Hispanic family, you talk about counseling, you're talking about a privilege.
Yeah.
I don't have the privilege to go to counseling.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
It's either pay the rent or go to counseling.
Or go to counseling. No, I'm just going to stay here. And then they realize that, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like
they settle.
They settle. And it's like, I'm going through this now, but if I wait 2-3 days, I'm going to forget about it. Maybe if I'm being in a domestic violence situation, my partner's going to forget about it. And then we're going to have a week of good times. And then even if he hits me again, I can live with it because I don't have the money to get out. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help.
The resources.
And then you have children. The resources. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And the resources are out there. It's just, again, it is a taboo to seek for help. As a family counselor, what effects have you discovered in some of these children's that the kids that you deal with on a daily basis? Of course, we're not going to name names or anything, but you obviously see, you're dealing with teenagers, you're dealing with
with families with all ages, kids of all ages,
and I'm sure that there's a particular story that might have affected you.
Yeah.
Prior to knowing, anything about me, but that kind of stands out. What are those things that you see that are almost like common across the board?
I think I think that something that always spoke very loud to me was the lack of emotional connection that happens in the families, in the Hispanic families. Some families can be very emotional.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference between a family that has very strong emotional connection and they speak about emotion, but it's a very rare kind of emotional connection, because we're used to saying, I love you, mija, or yes,
Yeah.
you, whatever. But in terms of the way we discipline or correct our children, it's very it's almost like if we detach from love and we go immediately into anger, and then it's like a weird dynamic, like we confuse our children, like, well, does he love me or does he not? Oh, well, then he didn't mean that he loves me. Like, it's like a weird dynamic that we live in the families, right? So to me, I think it was definitely that. I experienced working with a lot of, even I have to say, Casey, women and men who were young adults that were maybe already starting their own families, young families that I will work with, where both the dad and the mom will say things to me about their childhood that was like, oh my goodness, like this goes all the way back to when you were little.
Wow.
So we parent our kids from the child that we have within us.
Yeah.
We become adults, but we are actually just expressing the child that we have within us, the child that we are inside. So everything that these people was talking to me, they're experiencing stuff, every time it will go back to their childhood. I couldn't move past their childhood because it starts there. So that's why your story for me was extremely impactful, and it was extremely like, I need to speak to you. And I remember asking you all those questions because I needed to know, how can we prove that this actually happened? And it's like when I told you, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. Your life, it's a miracle. That's why when people reads your book, they can see that because of everything that you went through. And I'm pretty sure that maybe, there are other kids out there who are experiencing similar situations at home, and they don't know what to do. And the best thing that they can do is, number one, recognize and accept that that's not normal. Number two, speak to anyone that you think that can help. It doesn't matter if it's not a professional. Don't wait to speak to a professional, because even a neighbor can help you. Sometimes we're like, no, well, it's my neighbor, I'm not going to go tell my neighbor. But you know what? Maybe that neighbor is the one that's going to help you. Maybe that neighbor is the one that likes gossip and won't speak about what's happening, but it's making it public. You can't hide when you're experiencing something like this. It cannot stay behind doors. It has to come out, because it's the only way that we can help.
This is so, I hope our listeners are, and I think that we have their attention by now.
Yeah.
Again, I remind you, I'm talking to Perla Leon, family counselor. Just amazing information, even just in the last 30 or so minutes. One of the things that I saw just recently, for example, there was this, I was on social media, and they were pulling a prank, and the prank was, it was this daughter making a joke, a prank to her Mexican father, and it was just a prank, and all you see is his hand.
Oh,
It was in.
Was it on TikTok?
It was on TikTok.
I think I saw it.
Did you see that? Mm-hmm. And it's a backhand. It was like but
heavy.
It was a heavy back, and then the comments were like, some were laughing, some were, and one of the things that the young girl commented on this incident was, "Relax, everyone, it's normal.
It's just my dad.
It's just my dad." And to me, it was like, I watched it, and this happens,
right?
I don't care if you're Guatemalan, Mexican, Salvadoran, wherever. It's a common thing. We even joke about it, right? Like the chancleta.
La chancla.
Yeah, right. We but that's how many kids are like authentically like in shambles.
Yeah.
Because this was their reality.
Yeah, and the thing is that what happens is like, and again, a lot of us can say, I grew up with that, and there's nothing wrong with me. But what they don't understand is this, Casey. Look, we have 3 parts in our brain. right? And I'm just going to go very simple. And I'm not a brain expert, but I have some knowledge that I can share today. So we have 3 parts in our brain: the lower part of the brain, the middle part of the brain, and the higher part of the brain. On the higher part of the brain, we have all the reasoning, the things that happen, the things that happen with reason, the smart part, you can say.
Yeah.
The middle part of the brain is where we have the amygdala, which is the one that controls the stress levels. And we have all of our emotions are centered there. And on the bottom part of the brain, we have everything that helps us and allows us to work, to live and practice our lives by instinct. It's like our animal, our animal side, like a survival mode.
Okay.
Right? So when you have high levels of stress and you live in a home where there are high levels of stress, you're constantly living and performing with your lower part of the brain.
It's just trying to make it through the day.
Yes, you're just trying to make it through the day. And you can say,
Wow.
"Hi, but the chancla, what is that going to do to a child?" And at that age, at age 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, whatever you're doing that is violence to correct a behavior in a child is just alarming and creating this level of stress that it's making them perform in survival mode. So then they're constantly doing things, making more mistakes. If you really think about it, what happens when a child, drops the cup at on the table and spills the milk, and then you yelled at them. The next day, he's gonna do it again.
Yeah.
Third day, again, and then he becomes
nervous.
Yes, and he becomes the child that he's gonna do it.
Yeah.
You already know he's gonna spill the milk again.
Wow.
Because he's performing always on that particular moment of his day when he's about to sit at the table. His brain is already reminding him, alarm, alarm, something can happen. Alarm, alarm.
Don't spill it. Don't
spill it. And then it goes.
It spills. Yeah.
So because they're living and just using that lower part of their brain most of the time. So yeah, that child is gonna forget about those times. He's going to grow up, he's going to go to college, he's going to forget about it, and then that's just going to become a memory. But in that period of his life, he was living with those high levels of stress, and that creates trauma.
Wow.
That creates trauma.
Wow. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I really am. And I think our listeners are
Me too.
loving it.
This is something that really passionates me. And it's just, I love talking about this stuff.
No, and it's so much, it's not just informational. It kind of makes us, look, I believe in disciplining children. I spanked mine. It wasn't like that. It wasn't, with a backhand. It wasn't with throwing objects to them. It wasn't like that. I tried to follow a biblical way of disciplining my kids as much as possible. You don't discipline them while you're still angry.
Exactly.
I learned that very early, and don't do the mean face. Don't do the calm down and then do the disciplining. There's a right way of doing that.
Yeah.
And then after the disciplining, that you close the door, leave them in the room, let them think that through. Why did I have to go through this?
Right.
And I always told them, I said, I'm going to close the door, and I want you to think about what just happened.
Yeah.
Why did we get to this point? And I gave it, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes 15 minutes. I always prayed. I always prayed. And, literally, as a parent, I think we don't want to do that.
No.
We really don't.
And then you do it and you feel like...
you feel bad, but you know that if God put it there, he knows best.
Yeah.
And so I always made it a point to not just, just leave them there and go about my day.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. What I did was they got disciplined, they got spanked, left in the room for, whatever duration. I prayed about it. And then I went back to the room and had a talk.
Yeah.
I sat down next to them and we talked. And the cool part about this is the Bible tells us that when you discipline a child, they'll love you. They'll love you. And that's when you're doing, I think when you're doing it correctly, God's way, you really see that actually happening. I remember we always ended up with a hug, a respect, we ended up talking for about an hour, hour and a half. It turned to laughter, and it was an understanding. And the episodes weren't like it wasn't like, oh man, I'm gonna have to spank him again. That was never in my mind. It happened when it happened, but it wasn't something that one of the things that my kids are adults now, right? And one of the things that my daughter shared with my son, who's he's 11 years old. And one of and it's funny, he says that they tell him, you have it so easy.
Oh, because you practice with them too.
Jacob, you have it so easy. Yeah. When we were scared of Dad, and they're laughing about it. We were like, Dad.
They're not scared of their dad.
They're not.
If I tell you, they're not scared of their dad.
Trust me, they're not.
But I'm pretty sure that maybe when they were little, I can tell you even now. Yeah.
I mean, an adult's about to spank you. There's going to be some kind of fear of that.
Yes.
But, I think there's a way of disciplining.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that specifically because I think that for me, I mean, in my experience and in my parenting, counseling and education, I even go as far as to say, even if you're Christian, I do not recommend spanking because it's a form of violence. Regardless, you know what I mean? Like, I know that the Bible says that we have to give him with the rod, but I think that we can find other ways. Jesus came after that. So discipline comes from disciple. So how do you disciple your children? Definitely they have to understand the meaning of consequence. There's a consequence, but we need to learn to put those consequences in place. When a child makes, and I always tell this to parents, and maybe this is a section where we're talking about parenting, but I always tell this to parents. When you park, let's just say it's an example. You go somewhere and you park somewhere and there's no sign that says that you shouldn't park there. And then you get a ticket for parking there. You go to court and you fight that. What do you say to the judge? You say, well, I was given a ticket, but this is not fair because there was no signs and I parked there. No one told me. I didn't know. The judge is going to say, all right, forgiven. You don't have to pay. Just go and then whatever, right? You come back to the same spot and you see that there's no sign and they give you a second ticket and you go to the court. What is the judge going to say?
You shouldn't have done that
again. Because, but there was no signs. And he's going to tell you, it's okay that there are no signs. But you, mister, you knew that it was wrong to park there. Whether there are signs or not, you knew that there was wrong to park there. So then now the consequence is then you have to pay. Because this time you knew that you couldn't park there and you did it anyway. It's the same when we discipline or we want to correct our kids. They're going to make mistakes that happen once. And then you're going to, as a parent, you're going to have to understand it's a one-time mistake. Let's talk about it. Let's teach them that it was wrong. And let's tell them that the consequence for something like this is going to be, X, Y, and Z. The second time that they do it, then the consequences has to be put into place.
So I'm going to get a little controversial here. I'm kind of, and not just because, but I think that it's important to like really look at, I believe like always looking at the whole entire thing.
Yeah.
Like never make a decision on just one thing. Study it out yourselves, because I think that like in our society right now, one of the things that I see personally is the outright disobedience of authority.
Oh, yes.
Rampant.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Like
no order.
There's no order. No one cares for order. This last generation that we're living in, we see dads and moms when they get a call from the teacher, let's say, right away the teacher is at fault, and not their kid. It's the teacher's fault. We see when somebody gets pulled over, right? It's why am I getting pulled over? Why am I getting pulled over? I mean that's you're being this or you're being that. Right. Right now we're dealing with racism. You're being racist, or you're pulling me over because I'm Hispanic. Yeah. Whatever the case is, there is no regard for just simple instructions.
No. Yeah.
And so when I see the scriptures and I see that God is saying, "Don't spare the rod, because you'll spoil the child," I always lean towards the Bible rather than man.
Right.
Even though I respect, your degrees, I respect your input, I really do. But I'll always lean to the scriptures because they work.
Yeah.
And I've always said this, look at the whole entire picture before you make a decision.
Yeah.
Even if you're listening to us right now, that's kind of, she's saying one thing, he's saying another.
Yeah.
But they're both Christians.
No, but I'm going to come back to you with something. Let me say, I'm thinking about what I'm going to tell you. Don't think I'm just going to stay with this. I have something to tell you.
Go for it. Shoot.
Yeah. So, yes, the Bible speaks about that, but it also says that we shouldn't provoke our children into anger.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. What happens to you when someone does something to you that in the moment, even if it's for a spur of a second, you think that it's unjust? You get angry.
Yeah.
That you can provoke those feelings in your kids. So I'm not saying that you don't have to discipline. I completely understand what you're saying, but that's why there's a part in my teachings and my series of parenting classes that I offer where we talk about raising our kids with intention. You have to know what's your intention. Yeah. If we want children to be respectful, you have to teach respect. If you want them to be honest, you need to be honest. So we're talking about values. So when somebody does something, let's say my kids, I have 2 kids, one that is going to be 10 and another one that's going to be 6. The one that's 10, it's something. Something. It's something. I mean, he challenges me. He challenges me because he triggers a lot of stuff in me, right? He's the one that challenges me the most as a parent. But I also constantly find myself that he does things, and maybe they're innocent things, but I always go to see the intention. Mm-hmm. What was your intention when you did that? Whatever. I'm not even going to say his name, right?
Yeah.
And he looks at me, but and he justifies, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, because in this house, those intentions, so that has a consequence. So he never gets away with no consequence. Let me tell you. Yeah. But I personally don't spank because I grew up like that. I grew up with, and I don't know how to spank without being mad. If I'm not angry, I don't feel the need to spank them. Yeah. If I'm not mad, I don't feel the need to spank them. To me, honestly, it doesn't even make sense to spank if I'm not angry.
Yeah, and see, like for me, it was I never got spanked.
Right.
Not once.
What? What? So crazy.
So then I end up in shambles in life because there was absolutely no discipline. There was hate that was thought to be used as discipline.
Do you think?
But there wasn't any discipline.
Do you think that if you would have had someone who was that figure, that disciplined figure in your life, things would have been different?
Yes, if there would have been a balance, because I think that's where it makes a difference. Yeah. In my home, like there's love, there's affection.
Right.
There's goofing around. There's
lots of goofing
around, as you know, my middle child.
Hello there. We know you.
We know you. There's a lot of that. And you know what? In fact, because we always talk about like in families, the middle child, right? Because that's the one that goes neglected and all.
Well, he's a middle child.
Yeah, it's always a middle child, right? So, but in my heart, I literally prayed and asked God. I don't want that to happen to my middle child.
That's good.
I want it to be right across the board that I'm fair with all of them. Yeah. And I would catch myself though. I would catch myself at certain moments where I was being unfair to her. Mm-hmm. And we have a great relationship. I mean, I think we do. I mean, we goof around and I have a great time with my kids. Back to your question, do I think things would have turned out differently? If that balance would have been there and the spanking would have been there, I believe so. I really believe so.
And I think that's why it's important. And there's a lot of programs out there, Casey, a lot of programs that help young people, kids, youth, with, this. Like they want to be the positive influence that they don't have
Yeah.
at home. They want to create it somehow in those children and those young people,
Yeah.
even at churches. That's why youth ministry is so important for us in church,
Big time.
because those are the kids who are going to become adults. I mean, I now we've been in our church for almost 14 years, and I see kids who I literally carried, and now they're like older, or like kids that started when they were 10 and now they're young adults. And I see them, and it's like, man, that's beautiful. You see the result of the influence that the church played in their lives, and it's amazing.
I'm glad that you just brought that up, because I need to say this. I've seen well-intended Christian parents
Yes.
that drop the kids off
Oh,
at
yeah.
youth, but at home it's a whole different deal.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It's horrible at home.
Yeah.
But they're Christian.
Yeah.
And then when they don't see the kid doing great in their eyes, they tend to blame
The church.
the church.
Yeah.
And I want to say this clearly. It is
Yeah.
not the church's responsibility to raise your kid.
Yeah, it is.
That is
not.
a help.
Yes.
Not the responsibility is not the church's. Those young adult ministries, those youth ministries, those are pivotal.
Yeah.
And they're needed. But they are not responsible for raising your children.
No, and I have to add to that, like on the biological side of it. I mean, when our babies are born, they give us a brand new brain. Don't look at the baby. Imagine the doctor giving you a brand new brain in your hands, and you have that brain in your hands. You are responsible for shaping that brain
Yeah.
up into adulthood.
Yeah.
Not the pastor, not the leader,
That's right.
not the friend, not the teacher. I mean, they have an area that
Yeah.
they work on, but I'll tell you, the main responsibility of us parents is to shape well that
right.
brain, to really work in that brain, to help in every area of emotional development, physical development, cognitive development, in every single area, because it all starts at home. The most important years of the development of a human being are from 0 to 5.
Yeah.
Because it's when we grow so fast. Everything happens so fast, and you go through so many shocks, because you're learning how to speak, you're learning how to walk, you're learning how to eat, you're learning how to behave, you're learning how to everything from 0 to 5. And sometimes we parents forget. We forget. Like, I found myself many times forgetting that my son was not 12 years old, that he was 4. And I used to treat him as if he was a 12-year-old.
Wow.
Without even thinking, because my expectations for him were way higher than what he was capable of doing. And as parents, we do that a lot. Yeah. And then when we see that we can't do it, it doesn't work, I didn't do it right, then what do? Well, we handle that responsibility to somebody else.
Yeah.
Let the youth pastor, let the teacher, let the grandma. That's another one. Grandma raises kids now.
Yeah.
Their grandkids. They can't be the loving, spoiled grandma. They have to be the one that disciplines the kids now. And that's completely out of order and wrong. And then biblically speaking, I mean, God gave us a gift.
Yeah.
And it's
steward.
To steward, but also it says and I think it's in Psalms where it says that it's a gift that he gives to us, and it's he's a sign of approval to us, to who we are. He approves of who we are. He's entrusted in us with something so beautiful and so unique, a human life that has a specific purpose that before he gave it to us was with him in heaven. And it's like, how can you not take care of that beautiful gift that he gave you? And we think, no, their kid has us. No, parents, I'll tell you, those kids were given to you for a specific task, for a specific purpose. And sometimes we forget about that.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I can ask you rather. I'm pretty sure, Casey, but I want you to say that to me right now, or confirm that or deny it if it's not. Your kids have done amazing, impactful changes in your life as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Big time.
But talking specifically about your story, I'm pretty sure that as a parent, you discovered so many things about you that you did not know were in there until you became a parent.
Yeah.
And that made you the man who you are now.
Yeah.
So your kids were a gift to you.
Yep.
It doesn't say, oh, you parent are a gift to your
them.
kids. The Bible says they are a gift to you,
us. Yeah.
to us.
Yeah.
So
No,
how can we forget that?
that's great stuff. That is so
Yeah.
great. We're going to come to a close here soon, but there are people that are going to be listening right now to this podcast. What's a path to healing for this type of trauma that, child abuse, neglect, violence, domestic violence? And I know that that's not your area, but
Yeah.
but what's a safe path to health in these
I think that
areas?
the one that can answer the question is you, because that was one of the questions that I asked you when I told you that I read the whole book, and I told you, I know it doesn't matter how many hours of counseling you can spend with someone.
Yeah.
I know, because I know that healing can only come from God.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it. There are things in our brain that are called neuropathways. And those things are created because it's what our brain creates. It's like a pathway to life. It's a pathway to behavior. And it's what kind of like directs us and tells us how to behave and what to do. And sometimes, honestly, I mean, you don't even know why or how they got there. They're just there.
Yeah.
And what I find amazing, Casey, in your story, and the reason why I love it so much, and I use it sometimes as an example in my classes, is because God completely rewired your brain. And we were talking the other day intimately about, certain experiences where that it's still something there, but God completely erased those neural pathways of behavior and completely made new ones for you.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in counseling. We can try and try and try and try, and maybe we can help direct, maybe spark something in there, but the complete healing and miracle only comes from the Holy Spirit. There's nothing
Absolutely.
else. Nothing
I
else.
100% agree. And, and it's one of those things that, if I didn't study the scriptures and see that God really, when God heals somebody,
Mm-hmm.
when he told people, you're whole, when he spoke words like that, you're whole. Like what he was saying is, here's a white, clean page.
Yep. Exactly.
Here's a clean bill of health.
Yep.
Upon whatever you went through, here's a clean bill of health.
Yeah.
And it wasn't medication.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't counseling.
Mm-hmm.
It was the work of the Holy Spirit that did something in my heart and will do the same thing in your hearts.
Yep.
I want to end with this, and I think it's something that a lot of my listeners probably kind of ponder about, especially the ones that have read my story. I attempted to murder my father on several occasions. Mm-hmm. And one that sticks out like a sore thumb is an incident when I'm about 8 years old, and I find him on the floor, drunk, passed out, next to a gas heater. And I turned on the gas, and with full intentions. It was almost like, here's an 8-year-old, and I think about it now, and I'm going, that can't be normal.
How can an 8-year-old think like that, right?
How can an 8-year-old be willing, with no feeling, no regard, and know that if he smells gas long enough, I do that with my hand. It's almost like going back to that day.
Yeah.
How can that be normal? It just can't.
And I think that it's an idea that crosses a lot of kids' minds. It's not unique to you, because if you really think about it, and it's like I shared earlier, I mean, you were like an animal. looking for survival. So without even thinking, it's possible that your brain was already thinking about ways to survive in that environment. And the only way to survive was by killing, the oppressor. I mean, disappearing that. If I can't get out, if I can't take my mom out, I'm little. The only way out was really getting rid of the one who was causing the damage and the pain. It's sad that it started in your life at 8 years old, but it's not unique to you, Casey. There's a lot of kids out there who have those thoughts and who have planned, they planned ways of getting rid of the one who's hurting them and the person that they love the most. That's why I think that we have to continue to try to educate people, our people. Like, I have a passion not only for parenting and counseling, but to really come to the heart of people and speak the word of God and the love of God into those families. I believe that there is restoration. Amen. Restoration is possible. It's not the knowledge. Obviously, the knowledge helps. Yeah. Trust me, it helps because it paints a different picture. Yeah. But the work is done through God, nothing else. Yeah. That's why my curriculum is called Christ-like parenting, because we want to emulate the love of Christ, the way he sacrificed his life, everything that he did in us first, so that our kids can be like us. Yeah. It's like, and also there's another Bible verse that says, I want to be like you. Kids, what does it say? Children, be like be like your loving father, or something like that. I don't remember it, and I'll be saying it wrong if I say, but I know that we have to want to desire to be like Jesus, so that our kids can be like us. Because if we are like him, then they'll be like us. Then we win. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yes, to say that to you, I think it's for people who have not read the book. Get ready to cry, get ready to connect, get ready to experience, get ready to maybe even ask yourself some questions, because even though I didn't have a life as like the way you had it, I was able to relate in a lot of emotions and a lot of the growing up in a Hispanic culture, that was very, very touchy, and it was very of connection.
We spent a great time amount. I think, man, we got to have you back at some point. Mm-hmm. But we're speaking with Perla Leon, and her website is enmitribu.com. Enmitribu.com. Yeah. If you're out there, you're Hispanic, you're bilingual, or you just, you know somebody that speaks only Spanish, and they need help, and they don't know where to even begin. This is a great starting point to point them to Perla, enmitribu.com, and get the adequate professional help. Yeah. You need to talk to somebody. You're not alone in this. Mm-mm. And my prayer is for those of you that are listening, and maybe your neighbor's kid is going through some trauma. Yeah. Maybe you know of a single mom that's going through some deep emotional stress, and they just don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. Here's the starting point: enmitribu.com. Listen, folks, we run to the end of this episode, but I'm going to promise you that I'm going to have Perla back over here. I'm over here doing promises. I don't know if I can keep it, but
I don't know. Maybe. Nah, it was great. I love talking about this stuff, and any opportunity I can have of just sharing, whatever the Lord has done in my life, all the knowledge, all the things that I've gone through, the courses, the certifications, all of those things. None of that matters to me, Casey. I don't have them on my wall, because it's not to glorify myself. It's just to glorify the one who created me. And that's what I want. I want to give back to the community. I really want them to hear what the Lord has to say for them.
And that's, and I see that in your life. And this is why, we have such a great friendship with your husband and yourself and your whole family. You're a wonderful family. and wonderful friends to us. You mean a lot to us. And I just, if you're listening out there, I want you to go ahead and make sure that you visit the website, get a hold of her, because this is someone that really authentically cares about this subject matter.
Yeah.
And, just reach out to her, Perla Leon, enmitribu.com. Hey, guys, we're to a close here. I want to remind you that you can always reach me at caseydiaz.net. If you want to support this podcast, you could always do that. Go to caseydiaz.net on the podcast icon there, press that, and it'll have sponsors there. And you can become a monthly sponsor to, hey, keep the lights on in this place. I can't do podcasts in the dark. But thank you so much for being with us on this episode. Thank you so much, Perla.
You're welcome.
I
It was great.
really,
It was an
really
honor.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
God bless you guys, Los Angeles. You gotta enjoy this thing. I mean, this is why we do what we do here at the Shot Caller Podcast. Love you guys. Till the next time. Peace out.